Take it away, Matt.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Why don't we jump right into this? Bob Bergman is a pioneer at the intersection of decision science, AI, and dispute resolution, with a career spanning more than 6 decades. As the founder and CEO of NextLevel Mediation, he has redefined how mediators, arbitrators, and attorneys use analytics and artificial intelligence to resolve conflict more effectively. His expertise combines multi-criteria decision-making, system dynamics, and negotiation strategy to transform how people approach complex disputes. Bob holds degrees from SUNY Albany and Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
I don't seem to be able to get your current location.
That's right there. With that, I'll hand it over to Bob.
Thank you for the introduction, and thanks to Maria and the association for inviting me to talk today. So I was going to sit there, but I think I'll just do this standing up and then we'll do a demonstration. So the approach today really is to give the background information on why I developed the software, and then hopefully, if there's enough time, do a demonstration, and we can do personal demonstrations. That's future data as we want. So just a bit of background information. So after as you heard, university stuff, I actually, not to give away my age, but in 1967, I was doing AI at MIT. I worked on the first AI bot, which played the role of a Rogerian psychotherapist, which, as you know, is turn every answer into a question kind of thing, which online was pretty great. Face to face, I'm not sure I could sit and do it. Then spent about 8 years in the defense business designing flight simulators, mostly for fighter aircraft. That took me to living in Paris for a while on a NATO contract, been doing a Mirage 2000 fighter at that time. And then my background, which was primarily in decision science and computer science, kind of morphed into more of the business world. And then I was running Intel's decision science group and their strategic planning until I retired in 2014 from that. So retirement lasted all of 6 months. And so I basically failed at retirement. And so now, by the way, I call it rewirement. Next time I say so just do something else. And around 2017, I started looking at this problem of dispute resolution. And the reason was because about 15 years of that time at Intel, I was chairing and sub-chairing different international standards efforts in mobile communications, so 3G, 4G, and 5G. I worked on first electronic medical record standards. I worked on digital rights management and things like that. So, but when you have to chair a group of 100 engineers from 20 different countries and get them to agree on something, you start to learn something about dispute resolution, right? And what really drives people. So at that time, I had developed some concepts of how to get people to agree by first getting them to agree on the methodology and then getting them to agree on the final stuff and actually doing something with it. So I took that experience and kind of morphed it into the civil dispute resolution. So let's talk about technology. Since I was there, like I said, my first email account was 1971 on ARPANET. Okay. ARPANET was kind of a precursor to the internet, but mostly within the labs, like Lincoln Labs and others, because we're working on defense projects at the time. So if we look at technology, we see if we look at when ADR kind of became a little more formalized, it was essentially around 1976. When there was the Pound Conference, I think, it was Rockefeller Pound was started formalizing ADR, the concept of multiple doors into the courtroom. And but that was all human driven, face to face, no technology, sit down, yellow pad, and whatever. Okay, 1980s, we began to see the introduction of technology, which basically was, computers, fax machines, beginnings of email, and some networks like ConfliktNet showed up around, I think, 89, maybe, something in that time frame. ConfliktNet was, I think, John Huey started that. Then we morphed to the 1990s, the emergence of some kind of online dispute resolution, and we saw mostly from e-commerce sites like eBay and Square Trade started to do some conflict resolution, but it was primarily transactional, I bought this, you didn't deliver it kind of conflict. 2000s, we saw more ODRs happen, and there were more dedicated providers. And then we got to the point in 2019 where we began to see a transition, primarily driven by COVID. So people started going to more video conferencing instead of face-to-face kind of mediation. But just going to video conferencing is not a big technology transition, it's a communications transition. That's primarily what happened. And if you try to do the same thing you did face-to-face online, it's a different sense of presence, essentially. So it's not quite the same thing. So we started, like I said, in 2017, because we recognized transition, or at least I did. And so NextLevel, we started building software to try to address some of the issues. And we also began to use, and we were the first ones to use AI in the beginning of 2023 to help mediators in dispute resolution. It's primarily because I had that long-term background with AI, so I tracked over the years what was happening with it. And especially around 2009, when we transitioned to these transformer models, which people call large language models today, right? But which, keep in mind, this is not knowledge. This essentially is a reverse engineering of the way humans use language. That's what large language models are. And especially in the legal industry, we have to be careful because lawyers, mediators have to depend on inductive and deductive reasoning, not probabilistic reasoning, which is what you'll get from a large language model, right? So it's not the same. We train these models on 16 trillion bytes or tokens of information, but the text information, right? The average 4-year-old already is absorbed 16 trillion tokens of information because you get it from smells, other senses, visual stuff, things like that. So you have to keep everything in context and have specific uses that you want for AI in mediation. Okay, now we've seen the transition of technology in mediation, but people aren't paying attention to the transition of the population, which I think is more important. So, as Herbert Simon said, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention and a need to allocate attention among an overabundance of information sources, okay? So what you have to keep in mind now is that in a world with overflowing information, attention is a scarcity, and essentially it's become a currency. And by that I mean that businesses get paid a lot of money to get your attention. mainly because they can sell the attention to advertisers. And because of that, they start to design platforms that keep your attention.
Possible to click away from the audio settings, notification at the top. To get-
yeah, sure,
Gotta
sure.
come in every slide. There we go.
Okay.
Well, she was paying attention. So, so then now we've moved into these kind of psychological designs that keep people on a platform specifically to get their attention, right? So you see this kind of doom scrolling on TikTok, you see Instagram, and you have to realize that these things are designed just like a slot machine, okay? The addiction is essentially the same as gambling addiction because humans want feedback and they just stay watching things. You know, if you look at a slot machine, you can see things roll. Well, watch what people do. It's basically the same kind of addiction. Just keep your attention in some way. And the people who can provide the most attention, like influencers, get the most revenue out of it, right? But again, this is focused on a change where attention now is actually an economy. So what's the result of attention economy is we get shortened attention spans. So people now struggle to retain the focus. You get this kind of cognitive fatigue because people multitask all the time now. All right, and that's a problem. And then, of course, you have other forms of behavioral addiction, and I'll go through what that really is. But there's essentially an erosion of depth. And, you know, you look at very flashy, quick communications, which is designed essentially to get a quick dopamine fix in your brain. That's how people design these things, essentially, to keep your attention. So, what's mediation in the age of digital distraction? And we can't ignore it because it's all around us. And, you know, in the late 20th century, like I said, 1970s, 1980s, we assumed that the audience in mediation really had a longer attention span and would sit and read legal briefs, they would sit and listen and discuss things, but you can't give a 10-page text dense document to people now and expect them to read it. They do not have the concentration to do it, okay? So in a sense, what's happened is, you know, we've expanded kind of the horizontal width of all the information people want to absorb, but no concentration on any specific thing. And of course, social media is part of that. You know, TikTok, for example, is, you know, providing this kind of quick dopamine rewarding content, leading to just shorter attention spans as well. And then we're living in this kind of multitasking culture. And anybody who's studied neuroscience knows that your brain's really not designed for multitasking. It's much more efficient to do one task at a time. If you spread your attention over multiple tasks, you probably do all of them poorly. And so this is a direct effect on mediation. So the statistics are really frightening. 25% of mobile phone users, right, can't eat dinner without their phone. This is worldwide. Okay, we're talking about almost 7 billion users, right? Can't go to the bathroom. 47% of young women who have children admit they look at their phone more than their children, all right? Which is definitely going to have effect on teaching people empathy, because you can't teach someone empathy if you're not looking at them, right? It's just,
You have a statistic for fathers.
I don't think they pay any attention. It's taken from someone who single parented kids from the time they're 8 years old, right? And so believe me, there's a lot of people I knew that just did not pay attention to the family stuff.
And so this is becoming a big issue. So if you look at the stats in general, not gender specific, and by the way, this will vary by age, gender, and experience and everything else, right? So the average attention span now is roughly 47 seconds. Okay. In fact, the study that was in the New York Times or Times Magazine basically said that human attention now is less than that of a goldfish. All right, which is not good news. We're trying to keep people's attention, right? So, and if you have to think about how this really impacts things, right? So, frequent task switching due to digital habits reduces productivity. As I said, your brain's really not designed, you can't read two books at the same time. Just doesn't work, right? And then you get this brain drain effect. So and especially in online dispute resolution, right? If your phone is within arm's reach of your terminal, you've lost 50% of cognitive bandwidth because people are going back and forth. Did I get a text message? Did I get this? Things like that. So you're not paying full attention online. And of course, like I said before, virtual presence and physical presence are two different things. Because the sense of being present is not just about visual cues, it's about smells, things going around you, and everything else that makes you feel present. Virtually, you're not quite present. And it's twice as bad if you've got a phone next to you, because people will be just looking at their phone or looking at their watch or however they're getting this kind.
Or even on the table at dinner.
Or, yes, that's what I said, literally 25% can't eat dinner without their phone. Literally can't.
If it's just sitting there,
Right,
it takes a piece of you. It's crazy.
yeah, you just keep looking. All right, so what's the implications? It's really interesting because this kind of behavioral addiction is problematic. So there's a really measurable decline in critical reading and thinking. So digital habits have led to kind of this inability to sustain attention and read something with any depth, because people are trained to read on a screen. And when you read on a screen, you tend to skim. You don't tend to internalize the information. You're just kind of going through it because that's how we learn to deal with the glare of the screen and reading at the same time. So we just skim through it, we don't go to any depth. There's a big risk in complex disputes because parties may miss nuances or fail to fully comprehend each other's arguments when delivered in kind of text-heavy formats. Then, of course, we get this kind of information overload. Look, the human brain is roughly anatomically about 100,000 years old, hasn't really changed much. But the amount of information we try to process has increased exponentially to some ungodly amount. And so we tend to think about the wide area of information rather than the depth of the information. So we try to accumulate all this other information, or at least try to read it, but we don't concentrate on any one thing for any period of time, which is problematic. So your knowledge becomes very shallow, although you have maybe a wide range of knowledge. And then, of course, there's constant access to information and solutions creates this kind of impatience with complex problems, making kind of slow, deliberative nature of conflict resolution feel onerous to a lot of people that just can't sit there. And we've seen what happens in the classrooms with people looking at their phones. We go to restaurants, we see what's happening, people just looking at their phones, they're not talking to each other. It's a dramatic change in the population, and this does have an effect on our ability to mediate disputes. Okay, so how do we decide to solve the problem? So taking my background in kind of systems thinking and system dynamics. I looked at disputes essentially as a group decision between two or more parties that have different agendas. And if you look at the problem that way, in terms of resolving it, that you're trying to really get to a group decision between the parties. And so you can apply some of the methods of decision science to help make that happen. But a lot of people don't study decision science. Okay, so, and I'll go into that in a little more depth soon. So if you look at dispute resolution as a system, you can see the system starts off essentially, you know, a plaintiff feels a sense of injustice from one reason or another, and that increases the motivation for a plaintiff to win something. That causes an increase in the sense of injustice of the defendant, which increases their motivation to win at something, okay? Now, just for graphics representation, if you see a plus sign in systems thinking, that means that the head of the arrow moves in the same direction as the tail. So if the tail increases, the head increases, tail decreases, the head decreases. A minus sign means it moves in the opposite direction. So if the tail increases, the head decreases. Okay, this is how we represent systems in systems thinking. Okay, so we have this cycle of, tends to be cycle of
What do you
motion.
mean by the head and the tail?
Okay. All right, you see the way the arrow looks?
The head of the arrow.
Yeah, the head of the arrow, yes, so. Okay, so what drives these things? Well, human nature, emotions, what I call child logic, which is, you know, look, as a baby boomer, if I went to my mother and said, oh, this, you know, this happened, it's not fair. The answer would be, life's not fair, end of TED Talk. Okay? Was no other discussion. That was it, right? And by the way, my mother, who grew up in New York, 1939, I think she was the 5th or 6th woman accepted to law school. So I had that growing up, that sense of, you know, rationality that was always there, integrated with, you know, New York sarcasm. So, which never leaves you, by the way. So, all right, so human nature, favorable plaintiff facts, maybe an unrealistic expectation of litigation results. All those things increase the motivation to win. What might decrease the motivation to win is stress from time, because the longer it takes, there are opportunity costs, there are other things that happen, and you say, okay, maybe I'll settle or something like that. So, and of course, if you understand the reality of litigation, that might reduce it as well. Same thing on the other side. Okay, the problem is, and here's that as the motivation to win increases, the willingness to settle decreases, and the ability to make good decisions tends to decrease as well. So when we look at the system this way, at this level, okay, what we did was, first thing, we developed the tools to help really understand through visualization what the dispute was about, the big picture. And I'll go into what visualization is. This is directly a result of decreasing attention spans, because people understand pictures now and videos. They won't read the text. So dispute visualization basically is a process of transforming complex conflicts into more clear structural visual models. And I think people have used these. They're basically, you know, you can see there's a variety of ways of doing this, like mind maps, things like that. So, but they serve, most of the research shows that they serve as a cognitive anchor. By the way, I'll make the presentation available so people don't have to take
Thank you.
pictures or slides.
Zooming in.
Yeah,
But this way I get to use my phone.
yeah. Exactly. This is the problem. So, see, I thought it was just the clients in the end. It's actually, have the same problem. So, yeah, so by using diagrams, mind maps, timelines, comparative frameworks, it helps participants see underlying interests and options and potential outcomes in a more structured way. So it kind of bridges the gap between emotions, logic, enables mediators to kind of guide discussions more effectively, because people, like I said, they won't read the documents. And if they do, they will get the big picture. So we decided to draw the big picture so you can see it right away. This way, we kind of address the attention span problem. This really improves the speed and efficiency of acquiring information. So we have a set of tools and a set of diagrams where hopefully I'll be able to kind of demonstrate it. But basically, they convert complex information into structured pictures. And it addresses this problem of cognitive limitation because you can explain a picture to somebody pretty easily. Here's the whole dispute. Got this part, this part, this part. But if they had to read 5 documents, they wouldn't get it. It's just the population right now. So grasping the big picture, kind of improving comprehension. So research shows that visuals kind of improve comprehension as our brains process images faster than text. And this is a known fact. And then also it helps in mitigating biases because visualization helps shift focus to objective information, kind of reducing the influence of emotional rhetoric and leading to more fact-based decisions. And, and making decisions is really a problem in today's world, as I'll show. So if we look at the system again, and I'll go through this quickly, there's another set of tools that actually help understand the real priorities of people so they can make good decisions. One of the problems is that humans aren't really good at making long-term decisions. Your brain just doesn't go there. So, for instance, if you try to imagine yourself 5 years from now, you can't get there. You can write things down, you can say what you'd like to do, but you just can't get your brain to think. Because things change pretty rapidly in this environment. You don't know, I might make a decision today to settle on something, but 3 years from now, I'm pissed that I did it, right? Because I can't do a long-term decision. It's just one of those things. So we developed tools in this area using decision science to help people make better decisions and do a little more critical thinking about the dispute. And so here we basically, like I just said, we will help disputants understand their real priorities using decision science. So what does that really mean now? So we're not taught, you can look around, but there are literally no classes that teach people how to make logical decisions. Kind of an important skill to have, but people learn by trial and error and observation, essentially. You can't go to a class to teach you how to make logical decisions. Yes, you can go learn Aristotelian logic, but that's not going to help you in everyday situations. And our brains are really unable to analyze large quantities of information at a time. Humans are only good at looking at 2 things with any intensity and making a decision. Is one better than the other, and possibly how much better than the other, right? So humans are good at comparing 2 things, and that's it. People often make decisions involving dozens of factors. And unfortunately, humans have evolved not to rely on logic. Basically, they rely on trial and error kind of solutions. And over time, you make some bad decisions or whatever, you start to learn. In fact, wisdom is essentially, an accumulation of bad decisions, right? So, assuming you learn something. So if you read, if you read stuff from like Daniel Kahneman, Noise, and Thinking Fast and Slow, those kind of books, you learned a little bit about the problems of decision making. And so we live in a world now that's very complex. Oh, like I said, overloaded with information. So there are lots of choices, too many choices, not all good choices, conflicting values, normal cognitive limitations. So there's this concept of bounded rationality, which I think Herbert Simon kind of got a Nobel Prize for what he called satisficing. And basically, not only do humans have bounded rationality, but there are biases. So we see biases that, like emotions, anchoring, confirmation bias, which is what people get from social media, essentially. I mean, they're always looking for some kind of confirmation, right? And it's also what you get, by the way, from ChatGPT, which will always confirm whatever stupid idea you have. They'll tell you it's a good idea.
It's always brilliant.
Yeah, you're always brilliant, exactly. And that's a danger because people will use it to make decisions and not necessarily good decisions. And even optimism and pessimism are biases. Well, it's okay to be optimistic as a person. It's not necessarily okay to make an optimistic decision, right? Because that's a decision essentially based on your ego. It says independent of the probability of success, and it's going to work for me. Plus, I put it out there. Okay, well, a lot of people think like that. It's great, but may not work out the same way. So how do we use decision science? So there are two areas of decision science. One which sometimes referred to as social choice theory, right, which is basically group decision making. And the reason we use this is because we define resolution of the dispute as essentially a group decision, right? So one of the methods is called analytical hierarchy process, and it kind of breaks down decisions into a hierarchy of goals, criteria, alternatives, and it's useful for prioritizing issues and stakeholder objectives, okay? And basically, you can see from, I took a snippet from the systems diagram. So what it helps is to really understand real priorities, not necessarily emotional wants, especially in a dispute. The second, people have been using for quite a while now, decision trees. This works great for things like litigation risk analysis, things like that, where you have essentially a tree of probabilities. And of course, most people don't understand probabilities. And if you're represented by eternity, they'll express probability linguistically, not in numbers. They'll say, oh, this is a good chance, a great chance, whatever. You don't know if that means 60%, 70%, whatever, right? And so you can't really use that information reliably for anything. But decision trees help understand litigation risk. And as you remember, if you can get the reality of litigation risk and time it takes into people's heads, that will also reduce the motivation to win, right? So one of the things we did in the software is not only calculate what's the expected monetary value or the risk of winning, but also time, because time is also currency. So decision science transforms time into more actionable insights, and it also provides AI with real user objectives. One of the things you don't want to do is just arbitrarily use artificial intelligence like a ChatGPT to ask it questions You need a specific problem you want to solve. And you want, in the case of mediation, you want users' real objectives, not something made up. Because you want to maintain some degree of neutrality. So the system's designed basically to take direct user inputs in terms of prioritizing their objectives. And then AI can use that analytical data specifically to try to suggest alternatives that might work. But you can't use it in a vacuum. So how does that really work? Well, we're trying to move people from kind of their midbrain to their outer cortex to get, because we can't get their attention in general, we can do in a very short period of time, very specific things to get their attention. And they are part of the AHP or analytical hierarchy process. Because humans are only good at comparing two things, we change their objectives into these pairwise comparisons. So the system will take your 4 or 5 or 3 objectives and say, okay, what's more important, A or B? How much more important? 2 times, 3 times? When you force people to think like that, you shift them from their amygdala to their prefrontal cortex.
Sensorial. That's it.
And because you can't be quantitative and emotional at the same time. It's just 2 different parts of your brain, so you want to get them at least for a very short period of time, because you can't, because of the attention span problem, to get them to think a little more critically. This is the same thing that your optometrist does to calculate your prescription, right? We know that humans can only compare 2 things, and so when you go get an eye exam, what do? They say, okay, which one is clearer? This one or this one? Then basically they shorten the focal length by some millimeters and say this one or this one, this one or this one, right? This is the same, not the same math, but and I'm not going to explain the difference, but it's the same idea, because humans can only compare 2 things with any clarity. And so that's why we do it this way. So before I go try to demonstrate the system, because I'm not sure we'll be able to get online, I'll take maybe some questions and then we can maybe do demonstration software.
It's been at a level of success.
Yeah, well, try to measure success of mediation, right? There's no, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, mediators measure success by the number of settlements, not the quality of the settlement, right? And so it's hard to make, some kind of metric that would actually measure that. We've had people, it's relatively new, right? Especially with the AI. So, people have been using, there's divorce mediators using it. There's a law firm that's using it. There's some other people that I can't talk about, but they're in the government. And then, so it's starting, but, this is a new concept, right? This is getting people to think a little differently during mediation. And because we try to address the problem of drop it in attention span, people are just beginning to understand that, or see it, even though they've been visually seeing it, that attention is gone and that you need to provide some other approach to get it back. So, I'd like to answer the question, but really, that's all I can say at this point. Yeah. All right, we'll take care of it.
A question, I really enjoyed your systems thinking slide, and that diagram is great. In terms of your plus sign, and the idea that your output is increased, as your output increases, so is your input, the driver also finds the result. Sorry, lost and that's my apologies. How do you have a term, a phrase, or a way to take that concept and use it into a prompt, into AI, so that you get that concept, again, materialized back at you? So when you're trying to explain the concept in AI so that you can have a more effective prompt? Do you have any terminologies to help capture
Well,
that thinking tool?
these are all feedback loops, essentially. It's derivation came from control theory, actually, back in the 1960s, okay? And if you design a prompt that says, here's a situation, and you create a cause and effect or causal loop diagram of the dispute, it will try to do that. But I haven't tried to feed causal loop diagram in to get an answer, but actually you can do that in our system. You can, we have a kind of a document research bot we built that you can do research on documents you uploaded. So if it'll look at a dispute that you defined through several documents, you can ask it to draw a causal loop diagram, and it'll try to do it. It won't look like that, but it'll give you an idea, because really what you're doing is looking at different causes and effects of each particular thing you're doing. And you might have seen some other lines, which is the two parallel lines on one of the arrows, which is essentially time, lag time in the system, because things don't happen instantaneously. It may take, and by the way, the longer the time between cause and effect, the more unstable the system tends to be as a result. So for instance, you go into the shower in the morning, you turn on the hot water. Okay, you don't know the length of pipe between the boiler and then the outlet of the shower. So you keep turning till it feels hot. Well, then it's too hot, so you go back the other way. Well, that's not cold. So you get this kind of dampened oscillation because you can't deal with delay. Humans are bad at two things: delay and abstracting information, see the bigger picture. You know, I had, for instance, a friend who takes an hour to drive to work. I say, you know, that's a long time. Nah. You know, I have a nice car, I listen to NPR, I drink Starbucks, whatever, and it's not bad. Well, so back and forth, it's 2 hours. It's not until you say it's 10% of your life that that same piece of information has a completely different meaning, okay? This is the same problem with some of the other things I was talking about. So I look at my phone 140 times a day. Well, by the way, that adds up to 11 years of your life, looking at your phone, okay? Now, add on social media, binge watching TV, online gaming, and some people spend half of their life in 2 dimensions instead of the 3 they live in, okay? That's problematic, all right? We can see what's really happening, all right? Anyway, it's a long answer to it. Yes, well, he was first, then, yeah.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm getting this, what you're laying down here.
Okay.
So it sounds like the first part is because people like me have reduced attention because we love our phones and devices. Something that's helping with that is breaking down ideas into images, and you gave some great illustrations. And it sounds like the second part is once the ideas, concerns, underlying what's underlying the position is laid out in a way that's visual. The process is to compare alternatives and see what feels. I mean, all studies show we make decisions based on feeling, no matter how rational we think we are. What feels like a better fit as we move through it. And your system, I'm going to guess in some way. Then I guess what I want to know is, am I missing anything in there?
No, I mean, once you've understood, or once, participants have defined their real priorities in terms of objectives, you can use AI to look through that and suggest alternatives. But again, the mediator is always in the loop, so there's no direct contact between participants and the AI.
We're gonna see.
So it's just all the mediator doing that.
I just want to get the background theory, that's all.
Yeah, that's kind of the background.
Yeah.
Yes,
I I realize that maybe it wouldn't be, younger people in the population, so as I'm like, I don't want to represent that, but when you say this percentage of time looking at your phones, I'm wondering if, the breakdown in terms of the granularity of the uses of that matters, because oftentimes I feel that people, have this like negative reaction to someone looking at their phone because they think they should be doing something else. I looked at my phone a lot of times during your presentation, but it was in fact because my eyes are not good enough to read the information. And I could take a picture and zoom in and I could read it and pay attention to what you're saying better. And so I think if you say it's 10% of your life or 11 years of your life looking at your phone, I could have spent half of that time reading books, which maybe I did on my phone. I prefer to read the print, but I just think like before making overall assumption that we also have to think about the granularity of uses, especially like what does that provide particular people in helping them interact better within their environment.
Yeah, generalization is always kind of fraught with problems, right? That there is no, and by the way, it varies by gender, age, which is one of the things that one didn't talk about, things like that. So just take it as an overall kind of assumption. But yes, and you might be doing work all the time. Then what have you done, really? You kind of killed the boundary between work and life. And so you sacrifice something instead, right? It's like saying, using Google is free. No, it's a percent of your life. Okay, it's not free. All right, and so you have to look at what the trade-off is in the time you use it, right? If you're using it always for business and you're always on business or you're doing business 24/7, that's not necessarily a good result either, right? And so, but you're right, you have to look at the percent breakdown, and it does vary by age. And I think even attention span varies by age, right? So a teenager has a bigger attention span than a 5-year-old, okay? But it's still not that big, right? So, but yeah, I would agree with you. You need to look at the kind of statistics. So you have a question?
Yes. First of all, thank you for the presentation, it's very interesting. And how can you explain a little bit more about the confidentiality? How do you deal with that during the
Right.
mediation?
Yeah, and this is going back to the adoption question as well. One of the big barriers to adoption is the risk of leaking confidential information to some of the models. And in the beginning, you could sign an agreement with OpenAI or Claude or any of these models. And they say, we won't use your information for training purposes. But because of recent lawsuits and copyright lawsuits, now they're required to keep track of the data and the prompts. So you can see over time, this confidentiality is going to drop a little bit. Although I'm not convinced privacy exists anymore anyway, but in general, I think, and I don't know if I can demonstrate it, but within the next 30 days, I have another piece of software I developed that you can run documents through that will remove all confidential information and substitute it with mnemonics. So if there are 5 people, it'll say person 1, person 2, person 3, dates of birth, social security numbers, credit card numbers, IBAN numbers, doesn't matter. So the idea is to remove all the confidential information, but still be able to use it with AI. So that should be ready by the end of the month, because I noticed that was one of the big roadblocks to adoption of AI, especially in legal industries, because it's it's a compliance issue.
Yes, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. Within the science of conflict resolution, Is there a framework you recommend for evaluating the impacts and non-conflicts of retaliation?
That's a good question. I think. So retaliation then becomes more, especially like in the workforce, that becomes kind of an EEOC issue. And I've been talking to EEOC over the last year, I guess. And of course, things are not very stable in the government right now. And so,
That's not very good.
not going to. So anyway,
You're in New
the,
York, it's safe.
right, yeah, so they've had, they actually want to use it, okay? And I have some examples of cases that were basically retaliation, okay, so you can use it. Again, the issue is, because it becomes an EEOC problem, is it really retaliation, defining that stuff, and it doesn't matter what the dispute is, to be honest with you. It could be an HR dispute, right? It could be a neighbor to neighbor dispute. It doesn't really matter, because the resolution at the end is two parties agreeing, making a decision. So by defining it at that level, it works for pretty much anything I've seen, even political, wars and things like that. But then I have other features that we use from like game theory, which is like fair division of assets. So there's a particular game theory algorithm, which, by the way, was developed, it's called the adjusted winner algorithm. It was developed by two NYU professors in the mid-1990s. It was used for simulation of Panama Canal Treaty and some other stuff. But no one's really ever used it much, so I figured, I'll do it. So the software allows you to actually, for instance, in a divorce, to divide up assets fairly, mathematically anyway, as a starting point, so that they're more Pareto efficient, and there's no other way of dividing it up that would cause one party to lose something while another party gains something. So, and that's based on relative importance of each asset, that each people goes through those pairwise comparisons, for instance, and will say, okay, what's more important, the car or the house? How much more important? And then it goes through that. Once you get those weights, you can actually use game theory to mathematically divide it up evenly. So, as a starting point for negotiation, right? So,
You get to the draw.
even the dog. Yeah, there's some things you really can't divide in half. That's one. So, any other question?
I have an interesting just observation. When you use the eye exam, I know for me personally, when I go to an eye exam, there's a certain point where I honestly, I just can't tell the difference. And then in my brain, and this is the bias coming in, I'm like, wait, is he just sort of messing with me? Is it the same one? And it gets in the way of the decision making. So I'm wondering, are there particular types of cases that this may not work with because people may have, I don't know, some deeply rooted biases where the visualization won't necessarily make sense to them?
Yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of cases. I would never say something works 100% of the time. So I'm sure there are cases. In our case, where you're comparing two things, you can say they're equal, but it'll take that into account. The reason for doing this is because you can compare objective and subjective things together, which normally can't. So for instance, if you, in decision science, if you're trying to make, I want to buy a new car. So what are the criteria used for buying a new car? Well, it might be reliability, miles per gallon, miles per charge. It might be the number of seats in the car, the size of the trunk. Those are things I can measure. But also style. Well, style is subjective, right? But if you ask people, well, how much more important is style than reliability? That's a good question. how much more important is one than the other, right? When you're forcing people to think like that, you can get through some of the emotional stuff and make them really put something down. And so I think that's how it kind of works in this situation. So. More questions? Yes.
A little more theoretical. In AI, let's say, we wrote something.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
No worries.
you know, for something that we wrote. And we're in an AI program that says it's not gonna use it. For training, and we kind of count on somebody else isn't gonna be able to grab it and publish it. I mean, how much can we count on privacy when it is promised?
Yeah, okay, so this is, at least a dozen copyright lawsuits out there right now. So this is a big issue, unresolved in a lot of ways, because the thing about language models, which by the way, large language models are just a reverse engineering of the way humans use language. So it's not knowledge, it's just pattern recognition, okay? You keep that in mind. And in the legal industry, you worry more about inductive and deductive reasoning, not probabilistic reasoning, which is all you'll get from a large language model. So in terms of, did it copy stuff? Did it use it? I don't know if there's a way to guarantee that right now, because the way this works, it's more of like a black box. You can't figure out, it can't figure out. No one can tell you how it got to conclusion B from point A, right? Because you don't see the path of chain of reasoning, all right? Now, in some areas like mathematics, it will begin to show you a chain of reasoning of how it solved the problem. But for other things, it's not there yet. And so it would be very difficult to just guarantee that it's not being used in some way. Although the problem is you'll sign agreements, but try to prove that something was copied is very difficult. Especially in things like music as well. It's not an easy problem. Yes.
I'm sorry I was late, so you might have already answered this, but I wonder if the things that are just in the cloud, like that you put on your cloud drive, is AI getting into that stuff too? Or are they using things that you think you filing away?
Well, primarily it's using publicly available information. But everything is kind of public, so it's kind of a poor definition, to count on. So, but it depends on what kind of cloud you're using, right? If you're using like Microsoft Azure or something, and you have some guarantees, or you have set up your own kind of firewall foundation stuff in there, then you can guarantee it. But if you haven't gone an extra step to protect it necessarily, it might be available. It might be available because someone else looked at it and then they published it, right? So you have no real guarantees, right? For doing that. That's kind of why we're also developing this confidentiality software, because there are no guarantees. No matter what anyone says, I wouldn't really count on it, per se. So yes, do it.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see, but
Yeah, so
what I
I
understood, I think the software really helps in the reality check.
Yeah.
Right, it really helps on that.
All right, so let's see if I can actually get online to it. Let's see. Yeah, this. So, you get to the web. choose an account. I don't have them. So just choose this one, I guess. No, how do I get it? Just trying to get to web.
Like, this is the what you trying to get the YouTube or something?
Yes, I could, can I do it this way?
Yeah.
Okay. It's time for glasses, so. All right, let's see. If I can remember any of the passwords. Okay, so here I'm in my account, let's say. And we're going to, there are two dashboards. One for consultations, one for mediations. Mediations are two parties or trying to resolve a dispute. Consultation is just one party, but each party can have multiple participants. Okay, so it could be a family or whatever. Here we're gonna go to a kind of a demonstration of it'll be basically, oops, let me back up a second. So I want to see if I got the right. Okay, so this is a construction dispute. There was construction company called Blue Sky Developers. They were supposed to build an apartment building for the owner, Mr. Knight. It was a 15-unit apartment with different kinds of rental costs, and Mr. Knight took out a loan of over $1 million from a company called E-Loan. And basically what happened was there was delay by close to a year of finishing the apartment building, so he couldn't collect rent, couldn't pay off the loan, so there were penalties on the loan, things like that. So he basically claimed it was a breach of contract and so forth. So once you've set this up, which is relatively straightforward, it's just putting in a description and who the parties are essentially. Then parties can upload documents as well as the mediator can take documents from wherever, Dropbox or email, wherever they're doing it, right? So you get a bunch of documents, you just upload them. And then, because I wasn't sure of the bandwidth available in here, I did some stuff initially. This is the research bot, right? So let me just go to the beginning. I can show you some of the stuff. So here, basically, we talked to the bot and we said, summarize the dispute in 2 sentences and bold the names, right? So it goes through all the documents and it gives you this quick summary. Now, the research bot only looks at documents you uploaded, nothing else. Okay, so as you upload the documents, it puts them into the right vector format and does all that stuff. Okay. Next question, create a mind map of the dispute in enough detail to understand the main issues. So that was the prompt I gave it, right? And you can see that's what it generates, right? From reading all the documents. So you can see there are contractual clauses to look at. There were, you can see there was actually a variety of main issues, right? One of them in the contract itself, there was, a claim for force majeure that happened that got kind of denied. There was construction delay issues. There was loan repayment issues. So basically, this lets you see, without reading through 50 documents, you can kind of get the idea of what the dispute's about, right? Just look at the parts and then you can decide what you want to focus on. Of course, you can download this, but the video thing is away right now. Okay, next prompt. Create a mind map of the dispute, again. This, we've asked it really to expand the main issues so that you can see all the issues kind of lined up. So you can continue to go down and ask it to get more detail on a particular area until there's really not enough detail to do anything. And of course, you can download the diagrams, copy them and paste them into things. Okay, the next thing, create a sequence diagram of the dispute. So let me see what's really happened in the dispute so far. So here we see it creates this. I can expand it if you want. So you can see the interaction between the three participants, right? Who did what to what, when. So if you had to read through a bunch of documents and figure this out, it would take a fair amount of time. But my feedback a lot of times from mediators, oh yeah, we get the documents 24 hours before we have to meet with people. Well, you're not going to be able to read through all that stuff and internalize it in a very short period of time. So this helps you kind of view the whole thing, so you get an idea of what's really happened. Here basically said, display the costs as a table. So it goes through one of the documents and kind of lists out the costs, and we'll add stuff up, do the math, that kind of stuff, right? Now, this bot is trained also in mathematics, so I can say, you know, he borrowed $1 million at 5% interest for 10 years. What's his monthly payment? And it'll calculate that stuff for you. It'll show you how it gets to that answer, things like that, right? So it can do, because a lot of times people aren't trained in certain levels of mathematics, they just don't know it. And so this will help you do it, right? So, but again, you know, I could say summarize, whatever. Summarize the loan document, something. Spelling's not right, but whatever, it knows. So again, you can get an idea of what the loan was. You can do whatever you want with the documents, right? And again, the big picture is, well, let's say, whatever, create a pie chart of the costs. Again, it's just to help understand things in a way that you can remember them. And so now it's going to go through the document, create a pie chart, and so kind of see. Well, you can do anything you want. Again, the idea is to help people visualize what's going on and be able to present that if they want to the participants. Again, only the mediator has access to this stuff, not the participants. And any documents a participant uploads can only be read by the mediator unless they decide to share it. Then they can share it with the other party if they want. Okay. So you can do, like I said, you can see, I don't know what else would make any sense here. And sometimes when you're interacting with AI, a lot of times the models will get bogged down. They won't respond quickly. You have to redo it, things like that. Maybe here, create a cause and effect. Right. Of the. It's the problem with hidden text. I'm not sure this will actually work, but it's kind of the based on the question we had before. But sometimes, like I said, the models get tied up, can't really you have to do it a couple times sometimes. We'll see. All right, so here we would. You can see you can see all the.
It's just another mind map, basically.
Yeah, it's another way of looking at it. see what causes what, basically. So this is kind of the, yes.
Are there particular types of mediation? So for example, evaluative mediation versus facilitative, or different particular types of cases that you see that this is more valuable for than others?
Not particularly. I mean, facilitative versus evaluative are just approaches to doing mediation, right? And, but in all cases, you need to collect information, you need to collect the right information. And then you can take any approach you want, you know, if you're trying to let people talk and get out all their emotions and feelings, that's fine. You still need to get to the right information one way or another, right? And so I think it, in terms of transformative, for instance, yeah.
What's the risk of bias and or sort of lack of awareness in terms of the initial submission then? So if I could elaborate, like
Sure.
in mediation context, oftentimes there will be like say an issue that comes up, right? If somebody wrote a description and submitted that before, there may be personal issues that they weren't aware of until they're in the mode of that with that other party in the conflict that come up. And so, like you said, people may not be good at differentiating what is more important to them. So I'm wondering what is the risk of that? Because then the mediator, if they view these charts, they may be preempting the discussion by focusing on the issues before going through the process.
Yeah, so we have to look at the software as a set of integrated tools, and we'll go through some of the other ones, right? So there's no, it's not prescriptive. You just use whatever tools make sense at the time, right? And it doesn't require you to follow a particular format. And so, yes, I mean, you can, maybe there is some misinformation or bias in documents uploaded and stuff like that, but then you can use another part of the system, for instance, to create questionnaires based on documents, right? And
Can you simulate,
So it's all, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's all the use of the program preparation for the mediator, basically, as opposed to the mediator using.
Sorry.
It's okay. As opposed to the mediator, displaying any of these mind maps to the people, to the participants to prompt discussion.
right, so you would look at this more or less in the context of conveyance. Okay, so this is capturing all that early information that you need to really start the process of mediating or negotiating and things like that,
So
right?
it's mediator prep.
Yeah, in a way, it's mediator prep. Now you can decide to, because it stores whatever diagrams you created, you could decide to display it to the participants or not, but they don't have direct access to it unless the mediator is always the human in the loop, right? We just don't go past that point. Because my experience is.
I'm just confirming for myself, because as I'm looking at your screens, I'm saying, oh, this is a timeline. This is the reading of the agreements. These are all the things that I do in prep.
Right,
And instead of doing it hard copy.
right. This is helping out.
helps.
This does it in 10 seconds versus 10 hours. Right. Yeah, that's the idea. So now if we look at this, the way this was set up, for instance. Oops, sorry.
Just a quick piggyback of that. If you did want to share out those visuals, which were very promptly put together, can you extract those, or if you wanted to share those out as something you copy and paste into whatever?
You just copy and paste it into something. Yes.
I just want to make a statement just for clarity. This is more. This is basically a tool for the mediator.
Yes.
It doesn't.
Doesn't do mediation.
Exactly. I
Right.
just wanted, I know it's on here, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Just to make sure, because I'm hearing questions, I'm also here, and as a mediator, I've been very wary of like AI mediation. Why? You know, but this does bring things together quickly, but you still need to meet the person. So this is a tool. Just
Yes,
clarify.
it's basically a tool,
Thank you
right,
very
or a
much.
set of tools. So let's look at the decision science part of it real quick.
Yeah.
So,
2 minutes.
okay,
I'd love to see
10 o'clock.
decision tree.
yeah, we can do that too, if you want. So, here's that kind of pairwise comparison. So we took a simple model and then Mr. Knight logs in and it's asking him, okay, what's more important, obtaining damages or finishing the construction, right? How much more important, right? How much more important is obtaining damages versus reduction in the contract price? And once you're through all those pairwise comparisons, which takes maybe 10 minutes, you can, Mr. Knight can see his own priorities, which is reduction in contractor price, that about consequential damages, a little lower priority, everything else was lower priority. Okay. In the case of the Blue Sky, who was doing this, the same thing. So if the mediator then says, okay, let me look at the assessment results, mediator can see the priorities of both sides based on their own inputs, not anything else. And once that's done, you can then say, okay, based on, and by the way, this can be a group of people because this is just showing the aggregate, but each of the participants in a party who's doing this, you'll get the aggregate and you get each individual one and you can see where they stand, which ones are close to the mean, which ones are out in left field for whatever reason. Okay, so if we look at this, we'd say, okay, areas of compromise. So we've described the context of dispute from summarizing. We're saying, okay, I want to suggest some ideas, maybe whatever. Invent some ideas, conjure up, giving AI some freedom to do stuff, okay, but still keep it under control because we don't want people making up prompts that doesn't make any sense, right? And so this is, well, let's say it's for compromise. And so then, of course, this thing is in the way. Let me. Okay, so we hit suggest. And so what the AI is going to do is take the real priorities that people put in themselves, not something we made up. Okay. It's going to look at that and then try to suggest, okay, here's areas of compromise potentially. And here's some ideas. Align new project timeline, negotiate a discounted rate, implement a financial agreement, whatever. It's going to take the priorities that people put in themselves and try to find some reasonable solution, right? And then it's also going to generate, so you can understand it, it's also going to put, yeah, so you can kind of see ideas for compromise, what the real differences are, potential compromises, some commonalities. They both want to finish the project and
That's interesting.
without changing it. So you get a pretty good idea. You can, because you can download this, do whatever you want, right? So this gives you an idea of how the decision science aspects are used. Now, in the same respect, you can also, I know I'm going to run over time now, but if I go, for instance, to admin questionnaires, I can create questionnaires, right? And the system will help me create questionnaires based on some of the documents I've uploaded, give a description. It doesn't matter what it is, it'll create a questionnaire. And you can say, okay, make them yes and no question, make them Likert scale questions from 1 to 5 or whatever. And then you put it into the dispute that you set up. And once people have answered the questions, then AI can take their answers and do different things with it. For instance, it can find commonality. You can say, okay, based on the answer to question 1 that party A answered, does it conflict with the documents they uploaded, for instance, or what do you, things like that. So saves you a lot of time in looking at those things. But as the mediator, let me just go back a second. trying to do a lot with. So. So we go back to this and we go to questionnaires. We can see what the answers both parties gave. So party A answers to 4 questions, party B, what were their answers? And then I can have AI analyze the answers and see where there's conflict, you know. So again, you look at these as a set of tools, depending on what you want to do to resolve. Yes,
As this is like amazing, of course, but I was also wondering, why mediation versus arbitration?
I don't think there's any, well, there's a difference because one is like a private lawsuit, the other one is more where someone else is making the final decision, right? And here you're trying to get 2 parties to agree on something, right? But you can use it in either case, doesn't matter. Yes,
I was just wondering, how do you get to use this software? What kind of agreement and how much does it cost?
no. He's an engineer, so. Yeah, so it's rough, it's right now it's $60 a month, roughly. Per user, it's not, we made it as cheap as we can, independent of how much area you're using, and then also. If it's an organization, then it's a different price, right? But it's 30-day free trial, so you can just sign up and play with it.
Let's play. I'm in.
Yeah, just play with it. So,
That is a wonderful note for us to try to bring this amazing session to some sort of closure here. We could probably sit here all day with you, Bob, and have you guide us through this process. You should all know that to get to today's topic, Bob put us through this process. We had a hard time deciding on what the title of this program should be. We had, I think, 5 titles, and we kept going back and forth, you know, which should we use? And it's amazing, it works. I mean, he kept giving us those choices, and the system came up with the title for today's session. So, living proof that you're sitting in a room that use this system. So, thank you, Bob, from beginning to next month, John Paul Lederach, many of you know that name from his studies that he's done over the years. That will be online. December will be Peter Coleman from Columbia, who's been working on conflict intelligence. Again, we're back online again. So very grateful that Bob joined us from Scottsdale, Arizona. Bob, we really appreciate you being here. And if you have a few minutes to hang around, anyone wants to come up, help yourselves to some more one-on-one tutorial. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Maria.